I think this review is going to be a doozy, and unfortunately, I don't think any of us are prepared to ever read this book. Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel where we love to read really, really good and draw pretty darn bad. Just so you know, I'm doing a reading challenge where I'm reading the Modern Library's books of the 20th century, and today we are reading one of the hardest books in the English language. We are reading Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. First, a TLDR on this book. Okay, how do you do a short synopsis of this book? If I'm being perfectly honest, having read now I think all of James Joyce's major works, I honestly think this is his best book that he ever created. I honestly think this is his best piece of work. It's important in a way that I can't completely explain without you having read the book. But if you read this book, I promise you, you will get something out of it. I promise you. I just don't know what you're gonna get out of it. I just don't know. Instead of trying to understand the outline, let's try and understand some of the circumstances of how this book came to be. And maybe that will help you understand sort of why this book is the way it is. First of all, this book took James Joyce about 18 years to complete. It was the last book that James Joyce wrote. And he was so desperate to finish this book that at one point he even asked a friend to help him complete it. And one of the reasons that this book took so long to complete, in my opinion, is because it is in the shadow of another book by James Joyce, which is Ulysses. And Ulysses was considered a modern crowning achievement that very few people have been able to top, and is also considered yet another one of the hardest books in the English language. So imagine James Joyce at the height of his popularity trying to come up with something that matches the tone and power and persuasiveness of Ulysses. And the book that he tried to write is Finnegan's Wake. So you could call it a sort of literary experiment, which is, I think, mostly accurate, because the book was completed in pieces that his colleagues then tried to dissect and understand, and most of them didn't understand. Most of them didn't understand the book. But even though people were confused and they didn't necessarily understand what he was writing, they tried really hard to get some support drummed up for him. So his writer friends came out with an essay collection that was titled, very hilariously in my opinion, called Our Examination Around His Factification for Incamination of Work in Progress. It included both positive and negative critiques of the work thus far. And you can find this somewhere in a library, I'm sure. So he wrote this book over what seems to have been a 15-year period. And as you can imagine, it took most of the life out of him while he was also trying to care for his daughter who is deeply sick. But he did finish it, and after he finished it, about 20 months after he finished this book, James Joyce passed away in 1941. So there is a certain kind of interesting poetic timing where James Joyce wrote a book about someone who died and was dreaming, and it is hard to describe exactly what Finnegan's Wake is, other than to say that it is a book that requires a dreamlike state to read, because it is a dream about a man who died and who may be dreaming about being dead. But I have to emphasize, this dream that this dead man has is not exactly like a cloud and rainbows kind of dream. Not at all. It is very strange and sometimes comes out more like an LSD-fueled trip. I'm going to give a brief description of the plot and characters of this book, and I'm going to rely on the webpage you can find on the Encyclopedia Britannica on Finnegan's Wake, which actually I think has a really excellent summary. The beginning of the book introduces the reader to Mr. and Mrs. Porter, who have 3 children, Kevin and Jerry, who are twins, and Issy. The Porters live above a pub in Chaplazod, near Dublin. Side note, Chaplazod sounds like some sort of giant lizard from Pokemon, but we're not going there. Once Mr. and Mrs. Porter go to sleep, however, their entire world changes. And this is where we enter the realm of dreams, history, and personal reflection. In the dream world, these characters are given different names. Mr. Porter is Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker, or HCE. Mrs. Porter is Anna Livia Plurabelle, ALP, and the boys are Shem the Penman and Sean the Postman, while Issy remains Issy. Now, one of my biggest gripes in this book is that everyone else gets a special name, but not the girl for some reason, and I found that very weird. Humphrey, or Mr. Porter, plays the archetypal father role and is referred to by a number of variations of the acronym HCE throughout the book. While the exact situation is unclear, it is revealed that the father, H.C. He, has behaved inappropriately in the presence of young girls for which he feels both innocent and guilty. Rumors are spread about this indiscretion for most of the novel. The mother character is representative of the archetypal wife of mother, and it is she who attempts to exonerate HCE. The novel itself ends with a monologue recited by the mother as she attempts to awaken Humphrey, or the dad, or Mr. Porter. Like, I know, right? So it's literally about a family that goes to sleep, but then they have a dream together, but they're different people, and they go do different events. And there's some really strange things about an old dude and young girls. And then the mom tries to say he's not that bad a guy, and then they all wake up or something. Like, it's cracked. Like, this book is absolutely cracked. Now, something also important about this book is to not think of this book as a book from page 1 to the end of the book. This book is not thematically linear, but instead it is cyclical. And James Joyce is relying on an idea proposed by the philosopher, the Italian philosopher, Giambattista Vico, that history is cyclical and not linear. And this philosophical idea, if you think about it, really permeates each of the different scenes and sketches and monologues of the different characters and the way that the book is structured. They feel both unfinished and unreal at the same time. And if you ask me, the most important point and why I said that the book doesn't read in a linear way is that in this book, the first sentence and the last sentence of this book are actually connected. So let me read the sentence to you, starting with the end of the book to the start of the book. The end fragment is, away, alone, alas, aloved, along the, and then followed by the first sentence, river run, past eaves and Adams, from the swerve of the shore to bend of the bay, brings us by the commodious victus of recirculation back to Howth Castle and environs. So the first sentence starts as a sentence fragment, but if you connect it with the last sentence of the book, which is also a sentence fragment, you get a sentence that makes more sense. So I think we can learn a little bit by just doing a quick analysis of the first passage of this book. Adam and Eve, of course, is a reference to the fall, which is the fall in the Garden of Eden, but Adam and Eve also in this case means a place. So normally we think Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden, but in this case, when he says Eve and Adams, he's referring to a place directly in Dublin. In this case, we're talking about the Church of Immaculate Conception. And it's a Roman Catholic church run by the Franciscans that's on the bay in Dublin. Which of course you would know if you were like an expert in Dublin geography, like duh. So this tells us that from the starting sentence of the story, we're actually not in some magical place. When you read the sentence, you might think it's somewhere magical, but actually you're located in Dublin. The swerve of the bay refers to the waterfront that's located in Dublin and exactly how it moves. And this swerve of the bay is actually a reference to the River Liffey, which James Joyce in various cases does reference the River Liffey a few times, I think, and it's often in reference to female characters or the feminine qualities of the river. So when we talk about the swerve of, we are talking about the River Liffey. Commodious vicus means a roomy village, which I never would have known. And this refers to the fact that the river and the water flows in somewhat of a circular fashion or flows around somewhere around the castle, Howth Castle, as well as this village. And I think we can say it runs around it because he uses the words environs, which in French means around. So the river runs around the castle. And now we have just dissected the first sentence of Finnegan's Wake. Wasn't that fun? So just take exactly the same sort of thinking we just applied in the last minute or two and apply that to the hundreds and hundreds of pages of text just like this. Every sentence is like this in this book. Now, believe it or not, the plot, which I described sort of already, which is about this family in this dreamlike state, is not actually the part that's hard to understand. The part that's hard to understand actually is the dictionary of words you'll need to understand this book. Because James Joyce not only used words that were out of style, or words from biblical language, or words from many, many other languages other than English, but also made up his own words that you have to understand are made up words. And many of these words are in references to important books or important works of literature in the English language, so they do sort of have a point. It's just you have to be really smart or really well read to get them. there are many made-up words that don't make any sense, or I'm not really sure why he put them in other than perhaps as a joke. And the best one being are the examples of the 10 100-character words that are meant to mean thunder. So, as one of his famous words for thunder in the book, I'll just read it to you. It is Baba Baba Gaharga Kamana Iron Kong Bron Tonaremanon Twan Thun Thorovahan Aswan Skan Tuhu Den Then Thrunknuk. The Nunkruk really gets to you. As he tries to tell the two plots of the dead man who fell off his ladder and is perhaps dreaming, and or the dream of the family that is dreaming in the rooms above the pub in Dublin. And Joyce has said himself of this book that you don't always need to understand what is going on in this book, and if you don't understand something, to sort of just keep going. So I really think that is the point of this book. It really is a just keep swimming kind of book. Now, on to the review, if I can review this book. You can tell from the way I'm talking that this book is difficult, and it was difficult for me. And when I say that this book was hard or hard to read, it wasn't hard to read because I didn't like it or I didn't like what was inside of the book. Because this book can be funny, this book can be weird, but then sometimes you also start thinking, what is the point of what we're talking about? And you start to get a little bit confused. Let me give you an example of some of sort of the too muchness in this book. Here's a quick passage. Wind turning pages on pages, as innocence with Anaclete play Popeye, anti-pop, the leaves of the living in the bulk of the deeds, annals of themselves, timing the cycles of events, grand and national, bringing false wise to pass. How? 1132 AD. And I don't know how the average reader or even the exceptional reader is supposed to interpret that passage. They just didn't have Google back then, and I think some people were even less well-read than people are today, or even less educated. And people just didn't have the time, energy, or probably the desire to look up what did 1132 AD mean to James Joyce? Did he even know what that meant to him? So other people say they like it, and I say I kind of like it, sort of in the way I would like a video of like a screaming opossum or something like that. You know, like a funny viral video that left you a little uncomfortable. As I review this book, my main thoughts always go back to, what is the point of this book? Why did James Joyce create this book? Who is it for? Did he just waste his own time? And I often think that James Joyce wondered the exact same thing. And that for me was basically my whole experience of Finnegan's Wake. Like a fun party with weird ghosts that keep trying to tell you how great a time they're having. But this book is also so beautiful language-wise, and if you read it out loud, like some of the passages I read out loud to you right now, it really is lyrical and really magical in ways that I think few books are. Now, if you didn't want to read this book, and I couldn't imagine why, but if you didn't want to read this book and you wanted to get the exact same flavor of what this book is about, you can listen to a song. It's called The Night Pat Murphy Died by Great Big Sea. It has some very important lyrics like, "Oh, the night Pat Murphy died is a night I'll never forget. Some of the boys got loaded drunk and they ain't got sober yet. As long as the bottle was passed around, every man was feeling gay. O'Leary came with the bagpipes, some music for to play." It's a song about people have a great party, they use the corpse to keep the drinks cold, and have one of the best times of their life, which to me feels like a pretty good summary of Finnegan's Wake, in a way. But if you want a 9-hour dream fantasy version of a corpse that's keeping everybody at the party, then Finnegan's Wake might be for you. Okay, I'm gonna stop here, not because I think it's a good place to stop, but because I think you could do hours and hours of analyzing every passage in this book. Okay, well, it's time to put Finnegan's Wake to bed and call it a night. Did you ever read parts of this book or ever finish reading the entire of Finnegan's Wake? Please feel free to tell me any ideas, dreams, or revelations you had in the comments below. And if you think I've been fooled into feeling intellectual while reading this book, please let me know as well, because I would probably agree with you. If you like this review, please like, share, and subscribe. And I love to hear from you, so if you have any thoughts about this book or any questions about this book, please write me a comment and I love to respond to them. Next time we will be getting out our school uniforms for the schoolmistress in the book The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark. Well, that's all for me this week. I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful week of reading. And as always, stay curious, stay reading.